Teboan. Welcome to the Monday's Dhamma discussion, Dhamma. Today we thought of taking up a very general topic. Though it is general, we thought of having an in-depth discussion about this. Now, since Buddhism is, I guess it's more than 2,500 years old, and over the years, the way the Buddhists practice Buddhism has changed. And over the years, not only with the time, but also from culture to culture, from nation to nation, and so on. So we thought we'll just, today we'll ponder upon the fact that how these ritualistic practices, how far have they helped, or how far do they make a barrier for people to search for the truth or freedom or nibbana, or do they actually help or contribute towards it? So for this discussion, we have cordially invited the most venerable Digalle Mahinda Thero, the reader of Religions, Philosophies and Ethics of Bath Spa University of UK. And then we also have Mr. Vipula Wanigasekera of Sri Lanka Tourism. I can say that he's a visiting lecturer of tourism of many universities of Sri Lanka, and he's also the author of the book, the Dhamma book, Pointers to Enlightenment. And I would also call him a meditation instructor. So while welcoming the most venerable Digalle Mahinda Thero and Mr. Wanigasekera to this discussion, first of all, I would like to ask the venerable Thero, now when we say rituals, what sort of rituals, what do you see as rituals, and why do you think that they are performed?
I think the word ritual is an English term that we use, and actually maybe in Pali or Sinhala, probably what we mean is like puja or vandana or worship or offerings, making offerings or something. Now, what is interesting is that this word ritual, in English, it means kind of conducting a routine activity. So you will do something almost mechanically, and so it's a mechanical routine activity done in public, and so it's a kind of, in some ways, ritual is a demonstration of religiosity. It's a public demonstration of people's devotion to the Buddha, people's devotion to the Dhamma, people's devotion to the Sangha, and people's devotion to the symbols and the sacred sites and the objects and holy things that considered as sometimes called there's a kind of interesting word called paribhogika, saririka, uddesika and paribhogika. These are three types of typology in Buddhism. Sharirika relics means that relics that inherited from the Buddha's body, so the bodily relics. And then uddesika relics is that relics that can be visible, and usually they are artistic objects like Buddha statues and things
that symbolizes the Buddha.
Symbolizes the Buddha.
Okay.
And the paribhogika is the third type of relics, and usually here what we mean is something that Buddha used, like for example, Bodhi tree in a temple will be considered as a paribhogika, where Buddha sat for his enlightenment there. So basically, when we come to kind of Theravada classification, in the rituals behavior occurs in the shrine room where the Buddha is there, and then the worship services, pilgrimage, circumambulation in the in the area where their stupa is located. And the third one is that attending to the Bodhi tree and the worshiping. And those things perhaps someone will call ritual. But maybe in our program we can kind of go and try to understand these inner meanings of that, whether how, using the word ritual, whether it's appropriate or whether it enhances the quality of Buddhist lives, or whether it's a kind of deviation from the path. Maybe these are some of the things that we can probably gloss over in our discussion.
Okay. I would like to raise the same question from Mr. Wanigasekera. What do you think? What are rituals and why are they practiced?
Well, I think the Venerable Thero has given a very comprehensive description to the connotation of rituals. And I think the question is whether the kinds of rituals that the Buddhists practice, whether they could overshadow the true meaning of Dhamma, or the core message that the Lord Buddha has tried to convey to masses. Well, one should not get confused these rituals to traditions. Now, some of the traditions that we observe, like for instance, during Vesak time, the whole country is lit. And that's paying homage to this man par excellence, so that you can't probably call it a ritual, because it's something that, you commemorate. But basically the rituals that I see are the ones that you cannot possibly comprehend in relation to their outcome. Because finally what matters is, the time has come, time has really come for Buddhists to, shall I say, take the bull by the horn and to question their own practices, to question their own beliefs. And after all, Lord Buddha has mentioned, not to believe anything, unless it really convinces you in your own lifestyle, in your own ways, whether they are rational. So, in the light of that, I would say that some of the practices, although we can mention some of those things, but the issue is whether there is a correlation of those practices to the search for the truth and the search for the freedom from suffering. Now, I am looking at this from the global perspective. It's not just Sri Lanka only, because if you look at most of the people who are following Dhamma, who are following meditation, and they are not fascinated by some of these practices that are conducted in Sri Lanka, because they don't see a direct outcome from what they do to what they gain. Most of the people, because I am conducting a lot of meditation sessions for foreigners, and when you talk to them and what they are looking for is freedom, and freedom from suffering. And what is suffering? Suffering is worries, anxieties, stress, anger, hatred. These are the things with which the human beings are plagued. And it's fine, you are offering a flower and you pay homage to Lord Buddha, that is fine. But when you say a ritual, you could probably say you offer 100,000 of that to a particular place, and then you flood the whole area with flowers, And I do not know how possibly you could expect any kind of a benefit from that kind of a practice, So then you can see the difference between the tradition and the ritual.
Yeah, maybe we should forward it to to Bhante. How far do you think these rituals and the core message of Buddhism are correlated?
I think Mr. Vipula raises very important issues, and if you think about what is the Buddha's core message, probably we have to take the three characteristics. Three characteristics are the idea of everything is subject to suffering, that everything is subject to change, and because of those two reasons, it's hard to find eternal or constantly fixed self. These three ideas of
Anichcha Dukka Anaththa.
and Anatma. And now that's the core. Now, even there, you could see the most important one is this notion of impermanence, that everything is changing from moment to moment, so there is no substance which stays forever. And because of that very process, it's very human for us to think about stability and think about that things last longer, and we want things for longer. So this friction causes suffering, and so it looks like the impermanence is the most important one. Now, if you take this impermanence as important core value, we can understand the ritual very nicely. I mean, even the example that Mr. Vipula gave, like for example, offering flowers. Offering flowers to the Buddha, offering flowers to the stupa, offering flowers to the Bodhi, and so on.
Offering hundreds and thousands of flowers.
There is an interesting thing, because in the Sri Lankan tradition, when we offer the flowers, we use a Pali verse. Pujimi buddhang kusumena nena punyena mete achahotu mokkang puppam milayati yatai dhammi kayu tatayati vinasa bhavang. Now, if you look at this last line, my body fade, my body is impermanent, my body is decay. And now the comparison is this beautiful flower. Those flowers in front of me, they are colorful, they are white, brown, and pink, and whatever colors it is, they are very bright and very pleasant, and also they have fragrance. Now, this flower in the tropical weather, in the heat, in few hours they are not going to stay the same. The color changes. And now it says, kind of saying this, even the beautiful things, most desirable things have a negative dimension. They are subject to change, they are not going to that. So there is an interesting reflection there. These flowers are compared to your life. It's a kind of strong sense of meditation. So if people offer one flower, two flowers, or 1,000 flowers, and if you think about that flower and using that flower to see the heart of the message, there is that. And so so I see the verses like Pujemi Buddhang Kusumena Nena, that verse in particular is highly meditative, highly inspirational, and it's a down-to-earth way of explaining the core message of Buddhism, because my life is exactly similar to the flower, and only difference is I stay longer, the flower has a shorter life. And that kind of transiency is very important. Now, if you think about it, this idea, I'm going to go a little bit further, and this notion has penetrated all the Buddhist countries. And now I take example from Japan. And in Japan, like orchid, around from 1st of April to 10th of April, it's the season of sakura. And the entire Japan become very colorful during that period, and a lot of people go there and have, they have a lot of fun in the evening, they light them up and so on, and then it's like a more meditative, and they say, oh, these flowers are beautiful, but these flowers are not going to stay there. In 5-6 days they are going to drop. And in Japanese it's called mujo, the notion of impermanence, and that notions runs through the entire Japanese way of life, the arts, music, and even disasters like tsunami, when it happened, is translated into their practice. So it's quite interesting that even in the flowers one, they even have the Buddha's birthday on April 8th, and at that time they call Hanamatsuri. Hana means flower, Matsuri means festival. So flower festival, and they have a little baby Buddha, and they pour water on the top of the Buddha, and kind of the resemblance. So there's also, I think, they don't do it exactly like we do with chanting, but this idea of impermanence seems to be the core, and it kind of uses very nicely with flowers and so on. So it's very hard to say with the
issue is, Bhante, that the majority, that even though there is this gatha contains something to a subject for meditation, but do the majority concentrate on that, or do they just practice the rituals?
I think.
Is it okay even if they just practice without thinking about this meditative, aspect of it? Is it okay?
I think so, because when offering flowers, what people do is they are honoring the Buddha, and they are honoring the Buddha's message, and so the flower is a simple way of publicly, visibly explaining that there was a great teacher.
Yeah.
And I respect that person, and I bring this flower. Yeah. And then it's translated slowly. I think once you learn this verse, it become a part of your psyche. The fact to learn that beautiful things do not last forever. It's a very important knowledge. Any beautiful thing, any valuable thing is going to change. Yeah. And being able to accept that fact is changing is very important. Even though it's not completely understood, still I think people have a kind of implicit understanding on it. But even without it, but I think the thing is that if we stick to the principles like impermanence and dukkha and anatta, I think there won't be any Buddhism that we call today, because Sri Lankan, what we call Buddhist tradition would have been lost 2000 years ago, and there won't be any Buddhism left. So it continue with the rituals. That's what you're trying to say. It continue the ritual. It make meaning.
The Buddha Shasana continued because of the rituals.
Rituals, and also kind of there's a link is made always. Okay. The person who offer the flowers has the highest regard to the Buddha. That kind of I mean, as kids, when you go to the temple and do it, even when you don't know much Buddhism, but I think the idea of that I'm a Buddhist and I respect the Buddha, that knowledge is communicated to the children. And I think what you notice when you go abroad and look at the other Buddhist countries and so on, what you notice is how cultured and how educated our young people are. And partly it has to do with these rituals and also the Dhamma schools and so on. And because you see that in some houses, it's a kind of ancient custom that you, in the front of the yard, you will have a little shrine room, and you daily offer the flowers, and you take the precepts and you chant and so on. So there is a kind of active religion, domestic religion at home, centered with the mother. Mother is the one, mother or grandmother is the one who kind of provide a good religious basis for the kids. And if we don't have those things, I think the future is quite bleak, and I think we will enter into very difficult situation, even though that's how I feel about it.
I think that's an important point, Mr. Vipula.
Yes, I mean, I agree with the Venerable Thero. There's something that needs to be done to preserve and conserve the Dhamma as well as our traditions that we have been practicing for years. But the question here is whether there is an overindulgence in these practices which tend to overshadow the core message. So in the light of that, I would say yes, there could be a possibility, because at the end of the day, what we need to look at is, if you look at our own country, I have raised this in many places as well. It is true that we claim Sri Lanka to be a Buddhistic Theravada, and we have preserved the pure form of Buddhism. And then when you look at the kinds of things that are really happening in the country, in a Buddhistic country, like we are having one of the highest record of the consumption of liquor. And mind you, this is only legal, what is allowed, legal kind of liquor. And there is a lot of illicit liquor also in the country. So combined to that, I'm sure Sri Lanka must be number one. So if you look at the reality, the pragmatic situation, one might ask this question, yes, true enough, there's so much of practices, Buddhistic practices. You can see, even children, when they are just 2 years old, they are taken to the Hampasala, and, they learn Buddhism, the Buddha's autobiography, all that. And finally, when they enter the society and look at the society, it's everyone accepts that the situation is not as what it used to be. So whether this kind of rituals have drifted the people away from the core message, as Venerable Thero rightly said, Anichcha Dukka Anaththa, that itself contains what it's all about. So therefore, there is always a demarcation. You preserve some traditions in order to protect the Dhamma to some extent, but what about the pragmatic aspect of the Dhamma, and who is undertaking to carry forward the true message? So, and that offering of flower is just an example. Now I saw recently someone had posted it on the Facebook, and there's some huge amount of fruits being offered to some place somewhere in the guise of some puja, and the next day they were just rotting. They were just rotting, and I'm sure there were a lot of children in the country, underprivileged, who would like to have a fruit like that. And also we speak so much about dana. Dana is a key thing. Dana has the mundane aspect where you are sharing something, and it has the lokottara aspect also, because a lot of people think dana means giving, but the lokottara aspect of dana is giving up. It has both. So the question is, we see a lot of people, the elderly people, offering dana. So I was asking, in one of the forums, if a multimillionaire offers 1,000 rupees to a beggar, and which one is greater, that someone who is worth 1,000 rupees is offering 500 rupees to another. Now you can see the difference, what is done and what is not. The first one may be just a frill, just to show off that, I am doing this kind of things. And the second thing in these rituals is whether even some of these practices, whether the people are given the impression that by doing this, that I am engaged in a meritorious act, and therefore I gain merits, and therefore these merits will help me in mundane terms. Now whether there is this wrong message being conveyed through these practices, that is the other aspect that one needs to look at.
I would like to add something, Bhante, to that. Now, according to Mr. Wanigasekera, what he sees wrong is this overindulgence in these rituals. And as you said, these rituals have somehow or the other has helped the Buddha Shasana to continue over the years, over thousands of years. Now, I remember that when you said that people sometimes offer things or offer dana, offer things not with the intention of giving up, but with the intention of achieving more merit, which is correct according to Buddhism, I would say, because if you read books like scripts like Vimanavattu, there are lots of stories about these devas who, who just utter paeans of joy, that saying that they did these sort of offerings, and they were born in the Divyaloka because of that. Maybe it has nothing to do with Nibbana, but you could add something, Bhante.
Oh, thank you. I think there are a lot of questions here discussed. I don't know whether I could do it, but Mr. Vipula started a long list of things, and maybe I will try to kind of get one by one. And the first issue is about alcoholism. And now it is really a worry for everyone. I mean, it's not necessarily a worry for Buddhists, but it's also a worry for Muslims, but also it's a worry for any society. Because in any society, if there's a lot of alcoholism, there are costs involved in it. Because when there is alcoholism, there is the abuse of spouses, children, and the economic conditions of the family goes down, and then the wealth of the family goes down. And like in England, for example, NHS is the kind of the health plan by the British government. NHS has to spend a lot of money for the cancer patients and all these diseases and so on. So actually, alcoholism is quite costly for any government, including Sri Lankan government, and apart from the religious parts of it. So the alcoholism is a concern, and it's an important concern. But this alcoholism has nothing to do with Buddhism, and this alcoholism has nothing to do with Buddhist rituals, and this alcoholism has nothing to do with Buddhist doctrines, because they are completely operating two different levels. And let me explain why I say so. And during the colonial time, in particular in the British time, and they deliberately encourage people to use alcohol, and so in the British society, I mean, near my house, when I went to England in 2000, there were 5 pubs within half a mile, but now they are closing down. There are only 2 left now. 3 are gone already. So in the British culture, usually pub is actually doesn't have the sense of alcoholism. The pub is usually a place where you go for socialization, to get a meal or something. But in the Sri Lankan case, it's different. But I think I can see, I mean, of course, I was not here in the 19th century, but I could imagine how this, the pub's culture came to Sri Lanka. And then of course, I mean, we may have toddy even before, or other forms of alcohol, but alcohol probably has been in this country from the very beginning. And so the thing is that alcoholism, what happened in Sri Lanka is people abuse alcohol, rather than, I'm not saying that people should take alcohol, but what happened is abuse in alcohol, because I think in Western cultures, the wine and other things people do in moderation. The people go and drink, and then they don't beat their wives, and they don't make up, most of the case they don't make a fight, and they don't verbally abuse other people. So the people in the drinking cultures, they behave it in a proper way. I mean, Japan is another good example. I mean, the alcohol is almost like water, but still it's a civilized place, one of the safest places in the planet. And so what happened is that in our culture, people have not learned how to use alcohol properly, or they do not know to what is my limit, how much I should drink. So it's I'm not saying that, I'm not recommending or discouraging the practice. What we need is education. We need a form of education with these people. Say the health risk. What kind of Of course, at the young age, it's easy to drink alcohol, but what are the costs involved in it? What are the costs involved to your family and economy? So it's education. So it has nothing to do with the rituals, because they are separate things and there are other factors, and it is not the monks or the most of the lay Buddhists who run the pubs, and it's the government who give the license to these wine stores and so on. So there are a lot of other things go beyond the innocent Buddhist. So my worry is that we are in the midst of globalization. So I think anything which comes outside or which affect us, we should not say that it's because of our practices it happened to us. It's not that. It's just merely social pressure and other factors. I mean, nowadays I think in Sri Lanka I heard that you cannot bury one of your relatives without arak. That has come to that level, and weddings and so on. And now, who are these people? These are usually men, and so the males are the responsible. Now, if you think about the practice of religion, it is the women who practice Buddhism. It is the girls, mothers, and the grandmothers are the practice. So the male part is the one who is responsible for all these crimes, and I don't think we should blame for Buddhist rituals or Buddhist practices on this ground, because it's beyond our control. A lot of other economic factors and so on. So, I mean, that's my position. So I think what we need is, the situation is very sad, but we have to educate people and tell them the cost that they have with regard to alcohol.
Yeah. Mr. Wanigasekera, is there anything
No,
you'd like to
now that
add
we mention this alcoholism, of course, the rituals, whether they are Buddhistic or just traditions, they have nothing to do with the alcoholism. That is true. But the point that I was raising was that now some years ago, when I was a kid, I attended one of the sermons by then Most Venerable Aridhamma Thero in the Air Force grounds. We were living in the police barracks at that time, and he made a sermon, very hard-hitting sermon, and it was very, very heartening to listen to that. And he was virtually pleading with, there were probably 2,000 or 3,000 people at that time attending this. In his sermon, he was pleading with the people to give up any kind of alcoholism. And I know for sure, because in our police barracks there were at least 200 families were living. A lot of people gave up. That was such a striking kind of a sermon, and people virtually cried. The people who were indulged in addicted to this alcohol. But then you raised this famous this Vimana Vattu thing. Now after so many decades, now I am hearing another sermon going on for another 3 hours, showing the people the beautiful things that you can get in Devaloka. If you do this, you go to this particular Devaloka. If you do this, you go to that Devaloka. Now look at, what has happened. I was like questioning, this was my own experience. So are we, prevaricating the core thing that we ought to be doing, as Buddhists? So that's the point I was raising. It's not that I am saying this is right or this is wrong, but whether the core message is being submerged by these various beliefs and practice. After all, belief is a very word that is rejected by Buddhism. Lord Buddha said, don't believe in anything. Don't believe anything. I think that's a very, very important thing for all the Buddhists, until you realize yourself what it's all about. So therefore, reinforcing these beliefs through these practices is not a good thing for Buddhists anywhere in the world, for that matter.
Bhante, do you think practicing rituals now, we refer to Vimana Vattu, that by, perhaps by offering flowers or offering fruits, as he said, maybe we can get other benefits, merit, maybe being born in Devaloka or something. But do you think that those who practice rituals and rituals alone will get towards the prime goal of Nibbana?
I think it's a very interesting question, whether we have a direct path to the enlightenment. It's a desirable thing.
Yeah.
It's a desirable thing. Everyone wanted to get there. But whether there is a shortcut, I'm not sure. But definitely, I mean, if you think about these issues about...
Honestly speaking, I don't think everyone wants to get there,
I think at least there's a wish for...
Yeah, there's a wish.
At least there's a wish, say, that, everything that we do, at the end will lead to the enlightenment.
Yes.
That wish is kind of commonly shared.
Yeah.
And now, I mean, what is more efficacious, whether is it the meditation that lead into it or offering a flower? Definitely, I think we will see the meditation is more effective, definitely in that direction. If the nirvana is a target, then maybe the meditative kind of practice may lead to it. But nevertheless, everybody may not be able to practice meditation in a successful manner. They may not be physically fit, and they are not even interested in it. So, I think what we are talking about, when we talk about Buddhism, we are talking about a religion for a wider community, not for a few, one or two individuals. So, when we think about Buddhism or Buddhist practices, we think about in a mass scale. Now, these rituals are one of the ways that convert in those masses, in a wider scale, and providing simple ways of getting closer to the Buddha's words in simple methods. So, offering flowers and burning incense and going on pilgrimage and these things, like people who are fit to walk, they can go on pilgrimage, and who are fit to bow down, they can bow down. And who are fit to collect flowers and so on, they could do it. It may not cost money. So I think we have to understand is the efficacy of these rituals for average, the common people, the people who are not privileged, average people. I think they are quite meaningful. Them to maybe it may be direct path. Actually, they may not even want to attain nirvana, but at least they get a flavor of the Buddha, at least in a distant way. And now, I mean, interesting question is maybe because Mr. Vipula asked question, we have to go to one of the ancient scriptures. One of the ancient scriptures is the Mahaparinibbana Sutta. This is the discourse that talks about the Buddha's last 3 months. And there, Buddha discusses, there's always has been this division between the Buddhist monks and the lay people. I think what we call the meditation is actually the path of the monks. It's not the lay people's path. And the lay people's path is the offering flowers in simple ways. And Buddha clearly in the Mahaparinibbana says, Ananda asks, when Ananda asks what we should do. And Buddha says, the monks, you should not wander around, you should not devotionally involve. That's the word actually, rather than ritual. Maybe the devotional involvement is the one that's relevant for us discussion. Buddha says that monks, you should not be involved in the devotional activity. And then asks, Venerable Sir, what should you do? And then he goes on to say the significance of creating stupas, and he mentioned the Buddha and the Pacceka Buddha and the universal monarch and Arahant. In memory of them, at the junctions, you can create stupas, kind of basically more like a tomb. And there, Buddha basically says that then at that corner, lay people can go and pay respect. And that's actually the beginning of these rituals probably. And there Buddha says is that Buddha was kind of had a more wider perspective than most of us. And Buddha saw that, for the monks, it may be very slow method. But for a person who is not initiated to the religion, and who are not fully committed to the religion, the kind of going visiting the stupas and circumambulating around the Bodhi tree and going on pilgrimage, and these things they are initial pointers to the religion. It may not be the ultimate one which gives the enlightenment, but initial point. So see the thing is that if we focus on the enlightened community, probably Buddhism is dead by now. Because actually the Buddhism's potential to reach out and to reach out to underprivileged people, reach out to wider communities, that's what I think made Buddhism preserved. And so I think this meditative path is a kind of narrow path for a selected few. It may not be suitable for everybody. So we should leave space for the people who are not initiated, who are interested in the practice, but they gradually will form into the meditative path. So the rituals we see in the clearly, Buddha sees that devotion or Buddha Bhakti as important part for the layperson, but not for the monk. What is happening now is that everybody is trying to become a monk. So the meditative trend is basically saying that as lay people we have to live like a monk. It's kind of a little bit unfair for the lot of lay people, because we are proposing austere way of life for the lay people, because lay people should have their free lives. They don't have to necessarily conduct austere way of life. So I think it's kind of the conservative elements in our society, especially conservative elements kind of influenced by the Westerners who don't know any cultural context, or who could not understand this inner logic of this practice. Of course, they cannot appreciate them, but we should not use them as the yardstick to judge our own thing. The Westerners are not the yardstick, or Western practices are not the yardstick for our own Buddhist practice, because our tradition may be weak, but it has survived 2,500 years, one way or another. And all of these things have kind of fit into in one way or another.
Yes, since we have only a couple of minutes left, what would you like to, how would you like to conclude?
No, I think you are thankful to the Venerable Thero for giving an elaborated version. Each one has his or her perception on this, but the bottom line is that are we addressing the core message? That's is the core message is being conveyed effectively, whether it is through rituals or through meditation or through discussions. Is the core message being conveyed by the practitioners of Dhamma, and whether the people are given a reasonable, a very fair chance to be exposed to Dhamma. If people are not given that, I think what probably may happen is we will probably end up with rituals and without the Dhamma. And if we do not face this reality, we will probably see the consequences as we go on.
Yeah, and I think I'm afraid we have to wind up our program. Bhante, is there any final word that you would like to quickly?
I think this is the division between devotion and the meditative practice, an important one. And I think we should have a little bit more discussion on this. I think because some of the comments that Mr. Vipula made, they need really reflection and engagement. Actually, he's asking us to have more discussion. I think it's valuable to do that. Maybe hopefully we could do it another time.
Yes, so having put a comma to our discussion on how far the rituals, ritualistic practices in Buddhism, how far have these rituals helped the Buddhists maybe to make them happy, or maybe to reach the goals they seek, or to reach the goal of Nibbana. So with that, with the comma to our program, we hope to end it for the day, since we do not have time left. So thank you very much for being with us tonight. And if you have any questions or if you have any comments yourself, please write to us, the producer, Dhammahadaya, the Buddhist TV, Sri Sambodhi Vihara, RG Senanayaka Mawatha, Colombo 7. So thank you very much. May the most noble triple gem bless you.